someone has to just say yippee or yay or thumbs up or even shake your head. So I'll know that we're... okay, good, okay. So, Moira Veraboisai Kinderlach girls, today's out of like BaOmer. And our topic today is basically, anyways, is kashrus. So I guess on a normal Monday, I didn't look at the schedule. On the normal Monday, we would be learning now Mashiach, I suppose, right? Is kashrus. But because of Lag BaOmer, we're going to be learning now about Lag BaOmer. That's what our topic is, talking about Lag BaOmer. So I'll tell you the truth, I don't know how this works with you, but maybe we could do, when we're supposed to do with kashrus, we'll do Mashiach. But unless it's different girls, in which case I'm not able to do that, you'll have to let me know through the illustrious Mrs. Goldberg, who I'm sure is here someplace, so to speak, running this show. So girls, our topic is Lag BaOmer, and I just want to say that this class is also available on my website to a greater audience, but I'm going to bring with you. And Mitzvah Hashem, I'm going to be having also another class with Seminary Aleph, which is going to take place in Mitzvah Hashem at 2:30 this afternoon. Okay, I'm doing another class at 2:30 this afternoon. If anybody wants to join, I'm going to be teaching Seminary Aleph. I'm going to be talking also about Lag BaOmer. But as I often do when I teach the same thing twice, when I have two groups and I'm supposed to teach the same topic, I don't repeat the same material. I do two different things. For me, it's actually easier to do it that way than to repeat the material. For some people, repeating material is a breeze because you only prepare once. If I can't put my heart into it, I just can't teach it. So if I taught something, to come back an hour later and teach the same thing, if I teach it exactly the same, it's going to come across like a bore. So with you, I'm doing one inyan of Lag BaOmer, and with the mitzvah, the second group of girls, I'm going to do a second inyan of Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer is connected to two people, primarily. First of all, Lag BaOmer is connected to Rabbi Akiva, and second of all, Lag BaOmer is connected to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So with you, I'm going to be discussing Rabbi Akiva. With you, 1 second, just half a second. I need to quiet my machines here. Okay, now it's quiet. With you, I'm going to be discussing Rabbi Akiva, and IYH and Mitzvah Hashem, with the second group of girls, I'm going to be talking about the Rashbi. And if you want to get, so to speak, a picture of both personalities and their interface, join us at 2:30. If you can't get it on Bais Rivka, you go to my website, Inside Hasidus. The class is going to be beamed live, as is this class. The connection between Rabbi Akiva and Lag BaOmer is arguably a bittersweet one, right? What's the connection between Rabbi Akiva and Lag BaOmer? Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim died in 32 days. 24,000 men died in 32 days. How did 24,000 people die in 32 days? It's beyond tragic. And of course, the simple teretz is that there was a magefa, there was a plague, there was some kind of a contagion which spread, and these things have happened before. And Baruch Hashem, no one's going to compare what's happening right now to that kind of an infestation and that kind of Baruch Hashem, 90% of the people who get this illness or more survive as opposed to at that time. But that's the teva reason. Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim passed away so quickly because of an illness. But the Chazal say that there was an inyan of Lein Nog will cover that the pneumistic reason was that there was a deficiency in coverage from one another, which brought about Hepech HaChaim. I just learned a Sikha Thursday night from the Rebbe, where the Rebbe has another component. That first of all, there was a Magefa. Second of all, there was Lein Nog will cover Zebezeh. And the Rebbe says, third of all, there was an inyan of Ayin Hora. The Rebbe says it's not sufficient. It's not enough to say that they died because Lo Noga covered Zebazeh. It's not. The punishment doesn't fit the crime. 24,000 people should pass away because they didn't respect each other enough. So the Rebbe says there was also an Ayin Hora. So the Rebbe, so to speak, says there's three different factors that explain the death of Talmidei Rabbi Akiva. But the fact remains that Rabbi Akiva lost in 32 days 24,000 students. Now, I'm not going to ask you what you would do if you would lose like that, because I don't even want you to think that. I'm not even going to ask myself what I would do if we would lose anything near that. But we all understand that we'd all go cuckoo. The person loses so much, so quickly. You have to go out of your mind. the story girls of Rabbi Akiva and the link between Rabbi Akiva and like BaOmer is Taka Poskel Milamuth. Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim stopped dying, and Rabbi Akiva started over from the beginning like a young Rosh Yeshiva. Rabbi Akiva lost basically his whole yeshiva. You have to say that some survived, because if nobody survived, like BaOmer is a Yom Tov because they stopped dying. No, if everybody is dead, there's nobody left to die, so nobody died. That's not a Yom Tov. You have to say that some, we don't know how many, but a certain schum of Rabbi Akiva's original medium survived. That's why it's a Yom Tov, Poskel Milamus. Some people say Poskel Milamus means that they interrupted for one day and then they continued passing away after like BaOmer. There's different shittas about it. But according to the shita that Lamed Bais BaOmer was the last day that the Talmidim passed away, so when like BaOmer came and they stopped dying, there must have been some of them alive. But Rabbi Akiva was an old man, had built a yeshiva in one of the most important times in history, as I'm going to explain momentarily. And after he lost everything, what did Rabbi Akiva do? He made a new yeshiva. His new yeshiva had 5 students. Count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In other words, his new yeshiva was so small compared to his larger yeshiva, it was almost an insult to him. And those 5 Talmidim, whose names we all know very well, Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Ben Shamua, that is, and Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Meir. These 5 Talmidei Rabbi Akiva, they are the basis of the entire Torah Shema. The Gemara says, in Masechet Kedushin, I think, that each one of these 5 men is responsible for some of the most important Sfarim ever written. So Rabbi Akiva has this massive yeshiva. Everybody dies. He doesn't quit. He doesn't give up. He doesn't say, I'm an old man, it's too late. He starts over like a school child, like the Frierdiker Rebbe describes himself. For those of you who joined his classes, the Frierdiker Rebbe says, imagine being 60 years old. 60 years old. He's talking about himself. And starting over your life like a school child. Rabbi Akiva did exactly the same thing, under the most severe conditions imaginable. And the Chazal therefore say, Kulu aliba Rabbi Akiva, the Torah Shabbat that we have today, 2,000 years later, including Kabbalah, because one of these 5 Talmidim is the B'Shem Yochai, is all Rabbi Akiva's. And who is Rabbi Akiva? Rabbi Akiva's father was a Geir. Rabbi Akiva was a Ben Geir. It shows you what the Gemara says about the Torah, that the Keser Kahuna was given to Aaron HaKohen. Keser Melucha was given to David HaMelech. Keser Torah was given, the Torah was given in a desert. To say that the Keser Torah's Munach B'Keren Zovis, the crown of Torah sits in a corner, and the Keser Torah belongs to anybody who wants to take it. Even a Yid who's a Ben Gedim doesn't have a Yichus. I mean, you guys know the story in the Gemara, that they fired Rabbi Gamliel from the Nesias. And they put in his place Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, right? You all know that they put Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah in the place of Rabbi Gamliel. But they wanted to put Rabbi Akiva. And the only reason they didn't put Rabbi Akiva was because Rabbi Akiva didn't have Yichus, what we call today, disparagingly, Gej. He had no Yichus. He was a Ben Gedim. And they were afraid that because he didn't have Yichus, the Kpeidah of Rabbi Gamliel would hurt him. So the most qualified person to take the place of Rabbi Gamliel was Rabbi Akiva. They didn't give it to Rabbi Akiva. They gave it to Rabbi ben Azariah, even though he was so young, because he was a Moiden Dikem Yuchas. Rabbi ben Azariah was a Sidi LeEzra. Ezra Sefer was a Kohen Gadol. People don't know this. Ezra Sefer, besides for being Ezra Sefer, was a Kohen Gadol. And Rabbi ben Azariah was a direct descendant of his 10 generations later. But Rabbi Akiva, Mitad Lomdes, Rabbi Akiva, who was the Ben Gedim, deserved to be a Malam Akeim of Rabbi Gamliel, but they didn't give it to him because we're not a Miyuchas. So the Gemara says, we learn from this, the Teirah's Munach B'Keren Zovis, Teirah sits in the corner, and anybody who wants can take it. Even the Gemara says, Yukara Mepninim, right? There's different Gemaras. Kol Chafatzeha, Kol Chafatzav, Lo Yishuba. None of the desires in the world equal to the Torah. And according to different Girsa, not even desires of the Eibishter, like mitzvahs, are Lo Yishuba to the union of Torah. And Yekarehim Pninim, the Chazal say that Torah is more precious than Pninim. Literally, Pninim means pearls, but it's interpreted to mean the Kohen Gadol who goes Lifnai v'Lifnim. That a Yid who learns Torah is on a higher madrega than the Kohen Gadol. The Gemara says, Gadol Mamzer. Talmud Chacham, Kohen Gadol Amaris. A Mamzer, an illegitimate Yid, is not allowed to marry is on a higher madrege. If he's a Talmud Chacham, then the Kohen Gadol goes into Kedesh HaKadosh. Rabbi Akiva epitomizes this idea that Torah doesn't belong to a family, it doesn't belong to a yiches. Anybody who wants can reach the highest madreges of Limud Torah, as represented by the personality of Rabbi Akiva. So, like I said to you, with you, I'm going to discuss Rabbi Akiva. And the Mitzvah Hashem, with the seminary Olive Girls, I'm going to talk about Rab Shimon. And if you want to join, you're welcome to join. So I want you to understand Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva lived 120 years, I think. And his life, for the most part, was pure Gehenna. He didn't have an easy life at all. Until 40, he couldn't learn anything. Right? He was an Amoritz. I'm sure Rabbi Akiva had a special neshama. Don't kid yourself, yeah? He was a shepherd by a Yid whose name was Kalba Savu, I think, yeah? And the daughter of Kalba Savua, I think I'm telling you the right name.
Yes.
No, but Kalba Savua, yeah? And he had a daughter. It was the Gemara says, you know what Kalba Savua means? That he was so rich, people used to come into his home hungry like a dog, Kalba, hungry like a dog, and Savua, they would go out satisfied. And Rabbi Akiva ben Yosef was a shepherd in his estate. And Rachel, Bar Kalba Savua's daughter, saw him. She took a liking to him. But she saw that he was not ordinary, that there was something very special, deep about him. And she encouraged him to leave his job as a shepherd and go and learn Torah. So he used to say, I'm an old man. He was then close to 40 years old, and he had no money, and he had no connections. He was a Ben Gadim. He was, I hate to say it in these words, he was a nobody. How can I even think about going to learn Torah? What am I going to eat? So Rachel said to him that if you'll go learn Torah, I'll marry you. So the Emshech HaSipur is, the Rebbe said this once in a Lag BaOmer parade, and this is a medrash, I think it's in Avos Rab Nosson, that Rabbi Akiva went with the sheep to pasture, and he came across the phenomena that there was an overhang, like a little bit of a drop, a precipice, and there was a little bit of water pouring down from on top of the overhang to the stone below. And the stone, over time, had borne a hole. The water was dripping on the rock. And if it drips long enough and hard enough, and with enough perseverance, it made a hole. So the rock had a shape. It was indented because the mamish a drip. And Rabbi Akiva saw this. And Rabbi Akiva was lomed kavacheme beyatzme. He learned about himself at kavacheme that if a stone, which is hard, and mayim, water, which is soft, and eina kosher eimid b'fnei harach, if you insist the hard stone is born a hole through the soft water, he says the mind of a person, which is soft, can certainly be opened up to ein mayim ela Torah, that the water is Torah. So he says to Rachel that he'll marry her and he'll go learn Torah. And they agreed that they would get married, and then he would go learn for 12 years. When Kalba Savua, when his father heard that she married a shepherd, he disowned her. And she became unbelievably poor. She was so poor that she would collect oats from the waste of the animals. You know, animals eat oats, and sometimes they don't digest it all. She was incredibly poor. And she lived mamish in squalor for 12 years. Everybody thought she was crazy. Her father obviously thought she was crazy. Her friends thought she was crazy. But she had this belief in Rabbi Akiva. At the end of the 12 years, Rabbi Akiva came home. And he didn't even walk into the house. And he overheard a conversation between Rachel and her friends. That they were saying to her, your husband left you 12 years ago, and he's never even going to come back. He forgot about you. You're a fool. She says, not only has he not forgotten about me, not only am I happy about the decision that I made, if he would choose to learn 12 more years, I wouldn't have any tinus. So Rabbi Akiva didn't walk into the house. He went back for another 12 years. And she waited another 12 years. And she didn't know that he had come home and overheard this conversation. And after 24 years, he came home. And he came home with an army of Talmidim. He was already a Gadol B'Yisrael. He came home with an army of Talmidim. And when he came back, his wife, who was dressed in rags, came out to greet him. And she was so excited, she fell to the ground and she embraced his legs in joy that she had gambled right, she'd given away everything that her husband should be a ben Teda, and he became the Gadol Ador, Gidei Yisrael. So the people saw a schnurrerke, with a bag lady, they would call it today, interfering with this procession, and they wanted to push her away. So they went over to her, and Rabbi Akiva said they should leave her. And she said to them, Shaliva Shalachem Shalah. My Teda and your Teda is her Teda. And the Gemara says that when the second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, they made certain gezeres, they made certain takonas. And amongst the gezeres that they made was that people should not do things very lavishly. They cut back on the customs that they used to have by weddings. If you could imagine that. Weddings used to be even more ornate, even more elaborate. And after the Churban, they made all kinds of things that people should not do. And one of the gezeres that they made, if you can still hear me, make a thumbs up, because I just muted my sound, yeah. One of the gezeres that they made, that people should stop making a Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. There was a custom that when a Kala got married, if the chassan could afford it, he would buy her a hinuma, a crown, that had the, what would you call it, the what's the word that they would use? The skyline of Yerushalayim. And it was considered the most beautiful gift, the most expensive gift you could buy for a Kala, was the Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. And after the Churban, there was a takana made that people should not do this as a sign of Avelis. What Rabbi Akiva made for his wife, Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. And he explained that she earned it, fair and square. So of course Rabbi Akiva now became the greatest Rosh Hashiva. And the Chazal say, the Gemara says that the Eibishter showed Moshe Rabbeinu. The Gemara says that the Eibishter showed Moshe Rabbeinu, der shav der manhigo. He showed Moshe Rabbeinu v'stach ad yema acharin every inyan of Yidden till Mashiach comes. And he showed him all the people who are going to be learning Torah. And Moshe Rabbeinu entered into the Cheder of Rabbi Akiva. Now in the olden days, the way they used to sit was the greatest Talmud sat in the first seat. And the second Talmud sat in the third seat. And they sat in rows. And the perimeters, the outer Talmidim were lower and lower Madrege. That was the Seder. Moshe Rabbeinu walks into Rabbi Akiva's Beis Medrash. And they put him in the 7th row. Not in the 7th seat, in the 7th row. And Rabbi Akiva is Deire shal kol tag v'tag tili tilim shmalachas. Rabbi Akiva was learning Torah. And he was studying not the words, not the letters, the crowns of the Torah. He was mechadash many chidushim. So Moshe Rabbeinu says to the Eibishter, why did you give the Torah to me? He asked who this is. So Eibishter says Akiva ben Yosef, who's a ben Yedim. And he's going to be Deire. Every crown of the Torah is going to make mountains of halachas. So Moshe Rabbeinu says to the Eibishter, why did you give me the Torah? You should have given the Torah to him. So the Eibishter says to Moshe Rabbeinu, wait, you'll hear. So he waits. And eventually they ask Rabbi Akiva a question. And Rabbi Akiva says, Hilchas Gemira lo halacha l'Moshe misinai. This doesn't have a reason. This is a source. It's a Hilchas Gemira lo. It's a tradition that goes back to Moshe Rabbeinu. And there's a Chassidus to this Gemara. It's not just Tam Azei Avot. The Chassidus this Gemara is this. Rabbi Akiva may have been greater than Moshe Rabbeinu in Havana Sateh, in understanding the Seichel HaTorah. But in the Inyan of Ruach HaKodesh, in the Inyan of Nevuah, and the emphasis is Torah is not Ruach HaKodesh. Torah is not Nevuah. Torah is even higher than it. Torah is Torah. Pe'al pe'adaber bei. Kasher daber yishareyehu. Moshe Rabbeinu's connection to Lakus is by far higher than anybody else. And therefore he's connected to the Torah on the level where it's above Seichel HaTorah. When it comes down to Seichel HaTorah, Rabbi Akiva may have understood better than him. But the Yonim of the Torah that we don't yet understand, that exist on the level of Ein Seif, only Moshe Rabbeinu was the one to whom the Torah could be given. Now Rabbi Akiva's life, if you started Rabbi Akiva's life was pure Gehenim. Pure Gehenim. He had such a hard life. Why? First of all, his own personal life was not exactly a bowl of cherries. Second of all, Rabbi Akiva lived through 2 Holocausts. Not 1, 2. 2 Holocausts. He was a present by the Churban Bais. He was alive during the first Bais Hamikdash, the second Bais Hamikdash Churban. He wasn't the Gadol B'Yisrael at that time. The Gadol B'Yisrael at that time was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the Rebbe of Rabbi Akiva's Rebbes. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is Talmidim with Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkes and Bishua ben Chananya, and they were the teachers of Rabbi Akiva. But Rabbi Akiva was there. And when the Gemara says the second Bais Hamikdash was destroyed, the Romans killed millions of Jews. 70 years later, now Rabbi Akiva was the Gadol B'Yisrael. And he supported the uprising of Bar Kochva, which lasted, whatever it was, 11 years. And of course, Bar Kochva originally was very successful until Bar Kochva told the Eibishter, I don't need your help, Rahman al-Islam. Bar Akiva did an Aveda. The way the Aveda was, then the tide of war turned. The Romans took over Eretz Yisrael. They killed Bar Kochva. They destroyed his armies. And the Chazal say they left one of the generals built a vineyard, a vineyard, a kerem, which was miles long. It was a massive, massive kerem, that the entire fence, all around this kerem, for miles and miles, was 15 amas high, I think, of human remains. He took dead Jews by the tens of thousands, by the hundreds of thousands, and he stacked them, and the wall around this kerem, could you imagine, was human remains. And for 15 years, they did not allow these Yidden to be buried, and that's why we say a special bracha, Teva Meitiv, that you nitnu l'kvura. The fourth bracha that we say in benching is Midei Rabbanon, and it's because nitnu l'kvura, because they allowed. Rabbi Akiva witnessed all of this. He witnessed Churban Bais, and then he witnessed the Churban of Beitar and the whole Ma'is with Bar Kochva, and Rabbi Akiva's own demise. Rabbi Akiva was in the Asara Aruge Malucha. He was killed from the Asara Aruge Malchus. And he was murdered. The Gemara says, he was killed in an unbelievably cruel way. And there's an unbelievable remes you should know about Rabbi Akiva. That we know that there were Asara Arugi Maluch. There were 10 martyrs, 10 people who killed Al Kiddush Hashem. And then we say this in the davening of Yom Kippur. We say it also in the Kinnos of Tisha B'Av. There was Rabbi Shmuel Ken Gadol, and there was Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Nisi Yisrael, and there was Rabbi Akiva, and then there was Rabbi Chutzpis Hamet Turgemon, and Rabbi Shevev HaSefer, and Yehuda Ben Bava, and Wazir Amudai. There's 10 martyrs. They were not all killed at the same time. There's a couple of hundred years between the first and the last. Rabbi Akiva was amongst the 10 martyrs. What's the cheshbon of the 10 martyrs? Because Yosef HaTzadik's brothers had sold him into slavery. And the halacha is, if you steal a person and you sell them into slavery, if you kidnap somebody and you sell them into slavery, the punishment is death. So this Rasha from Malchus HaRashah, from Rome, came to the Yidden and he asked them, were the Aseres HaShvatim, were the 10 brothers of Yosef HaTzadik killed for the Be'ever and Geini Vishum Chare? And he said, no, they were never killed. So he said to them, from the time of the Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, and Yehuda, and so on, they're not people like you. So I'm going to kill you instead of them. And he said, if they were alive, I would kill them. But I'm Poshet being Makayim, the Eibishter's Teda, and he killed Asada Yerugim Melucha to, so to speak, to compensate for the fact that the 10 brothers sold Yosef. So there's a Moedim Kasha. The Moedim Kasha is, it wasn't 10 brothers sold Yosef, it was only 9. Why? Binyamin wasn't there. Yosef can't be blamed being sold. And the Reuven went away, Besake Batanisim. Reuven was the one who said, Al Tishbechu Dam. When the Reuven came back and he saw Vayel Deinena Vani, he was devastated. So the Shaila is, there were only 9 brothers who sold Yosef. So why would the 10 Arugim Melucha if there were only 9 brothers who sold Yosef? And the teretz is that the 10th is against the Eibishter. Because the Eibishter allowed it to happen. And the Eibishter was mishtatef in their shvur, like it says in Chazal. They swore that they would not reveal to their father Yaakov Avinu that Yosef had not been killed but had been sold into slavery. They only had 9. Reuven wasn't there, Binyamin wasn't there, so there was only 9 left. So they made the shvur together with the Eibishter. So the Chazal says in Ben Bechaya, Va'atam alu l'shalom alavichem, the end of Parshas Miketz, that when the 10 Harugim Meluch were murdered, Rabbi Akiva was killed for the Eibishter. But with each one, the thought of Harugim Malchus was killed for one of the 10 Shvatim, and the 9 Shvatim, there was Mishtatef Mechilas Yosef. Rabbi Akiva was killed, Tmurase, so to speak, Vayachol, instead of the Eibish des Shtatfus in the Mechiras Yisrael. You understand who Rabbi Akiva was? His life was pure Gehenim. He had so many tzaras. His life was so full of hardships. And the other side of that coin is that the Torah that we have today is Rabbi Akiva's. I don't know how much you guys know about biology, and my job is not to teach biology, not that I know it, and not that it's my business, but in biology there is something called genetic diversity. The opposite of genetic diversity is called the genetic bottleneck. For scientific reasons, for biological reasons, it's healthiest for a creature to be a child of many, many different parents. So when you have, let's say, for the sake of argument, an isolated population, right? Those of you who live in the south of Florida, you know, the Everglades, and you have over there what's called the mountain lion, whatever they go, puma. There's not a lot of those puma in South Florida, and they're isolated. They can't join other populations which are west and south and north. So they all marry each other. They're inbred. So genetically, they're very, very similar. They're almost all like half brothers or cousins. And when you have genetic bottleneck, the offspring are sick. They're much more prone to disease because they don't have a variety of genetic material that can help them fight different disease. So one of the things that they try to do is they try to bring animals from another place so that there should be a diversity of genes. There's an animal in the world that's called a cheetah. All cheetahs are almost identical, because the way scientists explain it, there was once a bottleneck. In other words, the entire cheetah population was reduced to 2 or 4 animals. And all cheetahs' lives are very, very similar, which is why cheetahs get sick very easily, because they don't have a robustness that comes from genetic diversity. This is true in Torah, Lahavnu. It's very healthy for Torah to have different yeshivas and different Rosh yeshivas who say different things, and they argue and they scream and they curse each other and they hate each other, they put each other into chedim. But the result is we have a complex Torah. Rabbi Akiva was a bottleneck. Before Rabbi Akiva, there were thousands of Bnei Torah. After Rabbi Akiva, there were thousands of Bnei Torah. Rabbi Akiva was almost the one that was left over. When you have a bottleneck of Torah, when you have Rosh Yeshivas and Bnei Yeshiva and Yeshivas in Sura and in Papadisa and in Ardo and in Tveria and in Tzipoiri and in Yavne and Yerushalayim, you have many yeshivas, many Rosh Yeshivas. So the Torah is enriched by this variety. They cross-pollinate, they share ideas. But when you have a Holocaust, mamish a Holocaust, and the Eibishter allows the destruction of the yeshivas, and what's left is one Rosh Yeshiva, one. And that Rosh Yeshiva rebuilds the Torah. All the Torah that comes after him is his. And this is Rabbi Akiva. If you want to understand how great Rabbi Akiva was, or to say it in different words, how important Rabbi Akiva is to us, appreciate this, that during the times of Rabbi Akiva, there were 2 Holocausts, not 1, 2, separated by 70 years. Basically, the Yidden made a cheshbon then, that just like when the Eibishter took Yidden, when the Eibishter destroyed the first Beis HaMikdash, 70 years later, the second Beis HaMikdash was built. So Yidden were thinking the same thing. After Chorban Bais Sheni, 70 years later will be Bais Shlishi. That's part of the reason they all bought into Bar Kokhba's Indian, because besides the fact that he was from a Yid and he was a great king and he fought with the Romans and he was Matzliach, it was 70 years later. They expected after 70 years there should be another. And Rabbi Akiva witnessed the second Chorban. And of course the end of that is Rabbi Akiva Poshet Kipshut paid with his life for Limud HaTorah, as we all know. So Rabbi Akiva's life was unbelievably hard. And Rabbi Akiva, the Gemara says, Kulu Ali with Rabbi Akiva. You open up a Mishnah, it's Rabbi Akiva's. You open up a Gemara, it's Rabbi Akiva's. You open up a Medrash, it's Rabbi Akiva's. You open up a Ma'amar Chassidus, it's Rabbi Akiva's. You open up a Shulchan Aruch, it's Rabbi Akiva's. It's all Rabbi Akiva's Torah. Because Rabbi Akiva was the only thing left after all of these Chorbanos. And he built once a yeshiva, and the second time a yeshiva. He had 24,000 students. Imagine that. The person has 24,000 students. And in 32 days, they all die. Rubam Kakula. You have to say, like I said before, some of them were left over. Because if they all died, then what's the Yom Tov of Lag BaOmer? They're all dead. And then the Gemara said they went to the Dorim. He took 5 men. 5. What's the ratio of 5 to 24,000? Huh? 5 to 500 is 1%. 5 to 1,000 is 0.5%. 5 to 24,000, huh? It's a teeny tiny percentage. But from those 5 Talmidim, all the Torah we have today, Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua, and Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, and Rabbi Meir. These 5 men who were the second generation of Talmidei Rabbi Akiva, the whole Shas, and the Safra, and the Sifri, and all the Midrashim of Halacha that we have are based on these 5 men who were Talmidei Rabbi Akiva. And keep in mind that this includes also Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, who was the father of Pnimius HaTeirah. It says in the Pardes, the Ramak writes, it's a machlokes who wrote the Sefer Yetzirah. There's one Sefer of Kabbalah that's older than the Zohar. Or there's more than one, or whatever. There's other Sfarim, but one of them is the Sefer Yetzirah. So he brings 2 shittas. One shittas is that Avraham Avinu wrote the Sefer Yetzirah, and the other shittas is that Rabbi Akiva wrote the Sefer Yetzirah. He's Masik. He concludes that it was written by Avraham Avinu. But I'm caught of Lavade that Avraham didn't write it. Because in the Sefer Yetzirah, psukim from Chumash. The Chumash wasn't written for another few hundred years. How could Avraham Avinu written the Sefer Yetzirah? The pshat of the ideas of the Sefer Yetzirah were given over Baal Peh by Avraham Avinu, and it was written by Rabbi Akiva. So the 2 shittas are right. So Rabbi Akiva is the father also of Seid. So a Yid was a Ben Geirim, whose life was pure misery, is literally, when you talk about the Messiah of Torah, there was a wide pipe, and then at one point it became so narrow. The Chazal say, the Gemara says, that there was the Torah Lishtakach Mi Yisrael, when Rabbi Akiva's 24,000 Talmidim passed away. The Gemara says there was a sakona that the Torah would be forgotten, and Rabbi Akiva went as an old man, a broken man. He started off from the beginning. He collected 5 Talmidim, and he rebuilt the Torah. So when it comes like BaOmer, and we celebrate 2 lives, every like BaOmer we celebrate 2 lives. We celebrate the life of Rabbi Akiva, and we celebrate the life of Rab Shimon. Now, Rab Shimon we celebrate for many reasons, including the fact that he passed away. Rabbi Akiva we celebrate, first of all, because his Talmidim stopped dying. In other words, there's a dichotomy here. You're celebrating like BaOmer for 2 reasons. Number 1, people didn't die. Number 2, someone died. How does that work together? That's the whole parish. But I think that when it comes like BaOmer, and we celebrate the life of Rabbi Akiva, we're not only celebrating the fact that his Talmidim stopped dying. We're celebrating the fact that Rabbi Akiva was a Yid, that no matter what kind of test the Eibishter gave him, you couldn't break him. Couldn't break him. Like the Friedrich Rebbe, Mamish, it's the same madrege. You see a Holocaust. You watch the best of the Jewish people murdered in the most mises mishunis, the most cruel ways of death. And what is your reaction? Rebuild. Rabbi Akiva is one of those very special people in the entire history of the Jewish people, that if you take Rabbi Akiva out of Jewish history, you don't know to the Hemshech. Could the Eibishter have created the world without Rabbi Akiva? It's like saying, could the Eibishter have created the world without the Eibishter? There has to be Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is one of those men without whom there is mamish no Hemshech to Torah. And you've heard this from me, one of my regular Mishigassen. I always tell this to you, that this is a challenge. If you had a piece of paper and you were told, write down the 5 most important Jews in history. The 5 most important Jews in history. So of course I've had years to think about it. You have 5 minutes to think about it. So my list would involve Moshe Rabbeinu, the first, and Mashiach, the last. Who are the 3 in between? My list is Ezra HaSefer, Rabbi Akiva, and the Rambam. You take away these 3 men, there's no continuity. Ezra HaSefer is so important, because Ezra HaSefer was, when they were building the second Beis HaMikdash, what Rabbi Akiva was when the second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. He carried it over. He made sure the Torah wouldn't be lost. Now, Ezra HaSefer was a radical man. In order for Ezra HaSefer to preserve the Torah, he made huge changes. There never was, in the modern world, we love reform, right? We don't like Reform Jews, right? We like Reform Jews. We don't like the Reform idea. But once in history of the Jewish people, there was a Reformation. There was a modernization. And no one denies it. The reformation of Yiddishkeit happened under the watch of Ezra HaSefer, who completed the Teresh B'Ksav, and he organized the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, the binding nature of Teresh B'Alpeh. If not for Ezra HaSefer, and then he also was involved in Yiches, and he was the Kohen Gadol, and he built the Beis HaMikdash. Without Ezra HaSefer, there'd be no future. Without the Rambam wrote the Shulchan Aruch. All the Shulchan Aruch that we have today follow the Rambam's model. Maybe they don't follow the Rambam's model completely, but the Rambam was the one who designed the Sefer of Halacha, which later became the design of the Shulchan Aruch that we have. The Rambam has 14 Sfarim, the Shulchan Aruch has 4 Sfarim, but it's based on the Rambam's design. And Rabbi Akiva. Well, why don't you count Rabbeinu HaKadosh? Why don't you count Hillel? There's so many great Tanoim. And the answer goes is because Rabbi Akiva was Yochid B'Deirei. This is just my opinion. No one is bound by my opinion. Rabbi Akiva was left over, and there was nobody else. And he didn't quit. The Eibishter punched him in the nose, and punched him in the stomach, and punched him in the legs. He was curled up in a ball from Yeshurim. And he stood back up, and he found a few Yiddish kinder, and he taught them Torah. And the Torah you and I learn today, this Fabrengen, is the Schus of Rabbi Akiva. And if not for the Schus of Rabbi Akiva, we wouldn't even exist. So when it comes like BaOmer, we celebrate the life of Rabbi Akiva. You know, when I was a kid growing up, they used to have, in February, they had Washington's birthday, and then they had Jefferson's birthday. Then they wanted to make Martin Luther King Day, so they became, instead of Washington's birthday and Jefferson's birthday, holidays changed. Yeah, lahavdil. Yeah. When do you have Gadol B'Yisrael Day? When the Yidden celebrate Chachmei Yisrael and their Mesiras Nefesh for Torah, it's really like BaOmer. You know, Shavuos you celebrate the gift of the Torah. Like BaOmer you celebrate the gift of Mesiras Nefesh for Torah. And Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shimon both literally personify this in the most extreme way. You cannot say enough nice things about Rabbi Akiva. Really, it's impossible. You know, I'll just finish with this word. There's 2 verses. Yeah, Rabbi Akiva was the need in case I made a gzer, you're not allowed to learn Torah. And if you learn Torah, it would kill people. Rabbi Akiva gathered together the children and they learned Torah. So I said to Rabbi Akiva, Talmud Torah, learning Torah is not one of the 3 Avedas. Mitzvahs, the Yehariv al Yaver, and it's certainly not children. The whole Talmud Torah of Ketanim is only in from Chinuch. It's a mitzvah to say the Eraisa, but it's not for now the Olam this. So Rabbi Akiva gave the famous mashal. It's a Gemara that if a fish is afraid of capture, the fishermen throw out nets, and the fish are very getting trapped, so they're very nervous. So the fox, who's considered the Pikach Shabachayas, says to the fish, come out of the water. You'll hide in my lair, which is dark and damp, and you won't get eaten. So the fish says to the fox, you consider the Pikach, and what you're saying is shtus. If we're in water, we have a chance to survive. If we come out of the water, we're going to die for sure. So Rabbi Akiva said, whether a Yid is allowed to be Mesa Nefesh for Torah or not Mesa for Torah, if you don't learn Torah, we're going to die. And he was Mesa Nefesh to teach children Torah, and then they arrested him and they put him in jail. And then Sharkuas Besari B'Mashrikis Shabaza, they brutally murdered him. So the Gemara says that his Talmidim came, they stood outside the grates. He was in a dungeon, and there were little bars. I'm assuming most of it was below ground. And they said to Rabbi Akiva, Rebbe, Ad Khan, after all your Mesiras Nefesh for Torah, after all that you did for Torah, this had the Eibishter repays you, this is going to kill you al Kiddush Hashem. But Rabbi Akiva answered, you know this from the Basi Legani. It says in the Pasuk, V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavecha, taijez the Mishneh, b'shnei yitzerecha, u'b'chol nafshecha afilu neidlas nafshecha, you should be Mesa Nefesh. And Rabbi Akiva told his students, Kol Yomain Nitzta'arti, my whole life I was asking myself, Mosa Yavil Yodav HaKayamen, it's a mitzvah say the Reis of Avas Hashem. The ultimate Avas Hashem is Avas Hashem to the point of Mesiras Nefesh HaKiddush Hashem. But you're not allowed to do that. A person's not allowed to jump off a building and saying that he's Mesa Nefesh. It's a Ma'abadat Meladas. It's totally in a Goy. In a Rosha, in a Seini Yisrael, in a Tzeder HaYehudim. So Rabbi Akiva said, my whole life I'm looking forward that maybe I'll be, quote, Zoiche, to be Mesa Nefesh HaKiddush Hashem. And now that Rabbi Akiva says to his students, Eibishter gave me this opportunity, and I shouldn't take it. I should make cheshbonis that veistach v'chai behem or leish yomas behem. This is the story of Rabbi Akiva. So again, to say in conclusion, I think we're not just celebrating Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim that stopped dying or interrupted. We're celebrating Rabbi Akiva, and it's really worthwhile to have a day dedicated to Rabbi Akiva. So if you'll come back at 2:30, again, if you can't get this connection, I'm doing seminar alpha at 2:30, and it's going to be available on my website, insidechassidus.org, and B'li Neder, we'll talk about Rab Shimon. Okay, good morning. I'm not teaching you tomorrow, so I'll see you all in Mitzvah on Thursday. Good morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, Zugezant, you will. God bless you all.
Thank you. Thank you.